Oh, the humanity, this thing called the one that F just keeps on getting techier and techier. What are we doing here? Well, today, of course, we've got to talk about some Max Verstappen because two-time world champion, the one they call Mika Hakkinen, has chimed in on the circumstance, the paradoxical predicament that one Maximilian finds himself in as at the 9th month 2024. It's going to get techier. Charles Leclerc too. I think I might have to put some respect on this chap's name as we post-mortem the weekend that was. His consistency as far as his lap 18 all the way down to lap 53, a little bit god tier, and we need to talk about it. But there are other stories in there, fortuitous circumstances, a cheeky undercut, a McLaren driver pairing that were doing time trolls in the middle of a race for want of team orders. There are other circumstances that not too many people are talking about, so we're going to talk about it. And of course, we've got to talk about Adrian Newey, because there is news that this dude is going to be announced as the latest and greatest hire in the Galacticos, the team of god-tier aerodynamic and mechanical technical minds, the one Lawrence Stroll is pulling together. Craig Slater now reporting that on the 10th, Tuesday next week, that there's going to be an announcement. Now, all the journos, the accredited ones, the most god-tier ones of them, have been invited to Aston Martin's factory, the one that he spent $250 million on, or pounds. That factory. That all of them are going to go to the Aston Martin factory and that they're going to announce something. Whatever could that be? Any guesses? Adrian Newey, anyone? Of course it's going to be him. The rumour, word on the F1 curb, per Craig Slater, is that he's going to sign a contract to the tune of £20 million per year, anywhere up to 4 years. Oh, the humanity. Well, how do they know? There's a couple of different things going on. Firstly, Fernando Alonso took delivery of his Aston Martin Valkyrie, didn't he, today? Very apropos and very timely. Why? Well, because Adrian Newey worked on that car, didn't he? That's the car that he designed that very nearly bankrupt Aston Martin cognizant back in the day. Oh, the humanity. What else do we know? Well, we know that there was the exclusive factory tour. We know that Lawrence Stroll is now talking about wanting to sign Adrian Newey. And we know that the other protagonists in this story have fallen by the wayside. Who am I talking about? Of course, I'm talking about Scuderia Ferrari. And they bowed down, not wanting to get into a bidding war over Adrian Newey with Aston Martin. They haven't got that bank, nor did they want Adrian Newey to have the power of veto, the power to hire and fire any one of the engineers that he was working with. This is Frederick Vasseur, this is Scuderia Ferrari, and this is bureaucracy. What else do you expect from Scuderia? Liam, you're a legend. Would love to go for a pint with you and talk everything about the one that F's Cameron. You're like a long lost F1 friend I've always wanted to meet. Best F1 content on. Leon, you're a proper Liam. My best friend's called Leon. That's why I Freudian slip. Liam, you're a legend, mate. You're a legend. And you know what? Before I get into the videos, let me talk to that very quickly, because F1 is a funny sport, isn't it? I remember when I first started watching at school as a young puck, 8-9 years old. There was only one other boy in the class, Andrew Busby, his name was, and it felt like a very dirty secret, this F1 thing, because nobody else could understand the language that we were speaking. Now it's Drive to Survivation. It's a very different thing, right? No longer is it a very under the counter type conversation. It's the gift that Liberty Media have given to the world, and some may argue that that's better or worse. I would say, Liam, just different, just a little bit different. And I think I need to get with the program as far as the TikTok space and the social media and what they're doing to grow the space and the sport into new demographics and territories. But I digress. Too kind, Liam, and I appreciate the comment, mate. You're proper. Let's talk about Charles Leclerc next, because the Adrian Newey. Oh shoot! Let me go back to Adrian Newey. I'm missing things, Liam. You got me off piece, man. I'm singing from a different hymn sheet now. Go on, let's nail the new thing in totality. Newey next week. Absolutely going to be announced. All the journos in the world are going to the Aston Martin factory, and they're going to do a very sexy press conference to unveil their latest and greatest. Why does this matter? Well, because Adrian Newey is one of the go-toest aerodynamic minds who have ever aerodynamics. Leighton House March 881, the most winningest aerodynamic guy. Not only is he an aerodynamicist, he's a race engineer, an engineer. He can fix the car. One might argue even that Red Bull are lacking for him in his troubleshooting skills, his ability to write the RB RB20 ship in kind is not lost on Red Bull, notwithstanding the likes of Pierre Vacher and Rico Balbo. They've said to anybody that will listen, Christian Horner to and Max Verstappen to an extent also, that they are good enough, independent enough to operate in a space where Adrian Newey doesn't exist. Questionable, eh? Mika Hakkinnen talks to this in a minute when we talk about Max Verstappen, but the timing of it seems almost just a tad too convenient. All of a sudden, Adrian Newey's not there, not able to contribute to the technical meetings any longer, and all of a sudden they can't right the wrongs, those trails, the not insubstantial multitudinous ills of that car. What am I talking about? Well, it can't turn in. Of course, that's a characteristic of ground effect cars, but where was that 24 months ago? What's happened? Where is the compare and contrast? What's the driver of this newfound ill? The downside as far as the RB20's performance? Well, if you listen to Christian Horner, he says it's nothing new, that this was always there, but because they were so dominant in previous years, they didn't need to push the car that hard. They could lean upon the setup window. Now, however, it's techie because McLaren ostensibly have the quicker machine. They're having to push the car each and every single race weekend, right? Hence, the lens is on that setup window. And again, talk to the go-toest ones, and they will talk about the sweet spot. The wider that you can have that optimal setup window, the less like you are to shoot away from the target as far as the setup on any given race weekend, right? Now the focus for Red Bull is on this minimal, the diminishing of the parameters and dimensions of that setup window, that sweet spot for Red Bull. Whereas conversely, McLaren have done one of these, right? Techie. And here's why this is important as far as Aston Martin are concerned. Adrian Newey, they're getting one of the best ones. They are absolutely getting one of the best ones. But so too are Red Bull losing one of the best ones. And this isn't the first name that they've lost, right, of late. Please see Jonathan Wheatley. Please see Fallows. Please see Rob Marshall. They've been losing names hand over fist. And again, success in F1 is absolutely a function of your ability to sign and keep good people. Churn will be the death of any F1 empire. Always has been in the past and always will be. Why does that matter? Well, because we're talking about the balance in the competitive landscape. Of late, you will have heard Lawrence Stroll saying that he's desperate to sign the Galacticos, put together a dream team of mechanical, technical and aerodynamic minds. Thus far then, if Adrian Newey is announced as we expect on Tuesday the 10th next week, he will have access at Aston Martin to the following: Andy Cowell, the man who spearheaded the Mercedes Turbo Hybrid success story; Dan Fallows, again right-hand man aerodynamically of Adrian Newey back in the day at Red Bull; Costa, not a bad guy, eh? He's another one that's been doing bits. Cardile too. This is techie now. Lawrence Stroll is indeed assembling himself the best that there have ever been as far as a team, aerodynamically, mechanically and technically in F1. You could argue, how's he going to squeeze them all in, right? How's he going to fit them all in? Frederick Vasseur argued something to this effect, that Paris Saint-Germain once upon a time had all the best players in Messi, Neymar and Mbappe, but too many cooks can sometimes spoil the broth. That was the point. That was the case that he made as to why that they didn't and couldn't throw the checkbook at one Adrian Newey. Oh, the humanity it gets taken. Go on then, let's put some respect on Charles Leclerc's name, because I don't think he's being given enough credit. You've heard me a gazillion occasions at this point say that Charles Leclerc makes mistakes, and he does make mistakes. Let's be honest. Not going to sacrifice any kind of partisanship or bias at the altar of truth sorry, I'm not going to sacrifice truth or objectivity. Get it right, Cameron, at the altar of anyone's partisanship. I can't do it. I don't care how much you love Charles Leclerc, how good looking he is, how fast he is point A to B. He's still, maybe not this season, but before this season, he makes very many mistakes. If he's the top tier of drivers, S tier or God tier, there aren't too many in that same sphere that make or have made as many mistakes as him. However, I say all that to say this: sometimes you got to take a seat, Cameron. Sometimes you got to walk back some things and just celebrate the dude for his in all his glory. This weekend past, he wasn't bad. I was doing a bit of a deep dive into the information just to see how good he was, trying to understand, pull threads, understand the wheres and the hows and the whys. Lap 18 to lap 53. Consistency, some say, is key as far as assessing a driver's ability to win races and championship. If you can be consistently quick, as most of the God tier ones, Michael Schumacher comes to mind instantly. You can be consistently quick and smash out those qualifying laps almost on tap, then you can win yourselves races and therefore championships. Check this out. Between lap 18 and lap 53, these were Charles Leclerc's laps. 123.8, 124.2. The reason why I emphasize that is because that's the only time you're going to hear me say 124, 123.8, 123.8, 123.7, 123.8, 123.6, 123.5, 23.3, 23.5, 23.2, 20. You get the picture. All 23s. Lap 36, 23.7, 23.5, 23.6, 23.7, 23.6, 23.6. Mate. Charles Leclerc is levels for the avoidance of that. Finishes the race with a 23.268 when he's being pushed, by the way. What does that represent? That represents God tier speed in conjunction with God tier tyre management. That consistency is rarefied air, and even I, as disparaging as I've been, calling that chap modern day journal lazy, etc., etc., sometimes you got to put some respect on his name. Now, that doesn't mean that the victory wasn't wrapped up in fortuitous circumstances also. I'm reading this book that keeps elucidating to the fact that any success or failure story will absolutely, as a percentage of the whole, have to attribute some of its cause to good fortune, just circumstance, stuff that just happens. Chance is the technical name in mathematical circumstances. And in this situation, of course, Charles Leclerc has to thank the cheeky undercut that he got nailed from McLaren. Otherwise, he potentially wouldn't have gone long. Would he have been able to go long had the temps increased as everybody anticipated them to? Absolutely not, because his fronts would have degged more than anticipated, right? Norris and Piastri exchanging qualifying times in the middle of the race just because they're not getting team orders. And plus, he wants to thank Scuderia Ferrari once. And again, long have they been the cause of his frustration, not providing him with a car. When they did provide him with a car that was quick enough, it was far too twitchy, far too knife edgy. Now, however, on the back of several upgrades, Ferrari, headed up by Frederick Vasseur, they've done what they said they should be doing, right? Or they've done what they promised to do many moons ago earlier on this season. How have they done it? Well, upgrade story, eh? What did they do? Well, they upgraded the mirror stalks, again, to optimize for airflow. So too the camera housing. What are we on about? This is minutiae that they were looking at here. The wing beam, the rear wing was a Monza specific one, right? So they can nail the straights, the straight down to Ascari and then the start finish straight. So they came with an upgraded package, and not least of which was the bloody floor and floor edge. Why? Because both Messrs Sainz and Leclerc, all they've been complaining about is bouncing, porpoising that most of the teams have since overcome. This is what Ferrari did. As soon as they dialed up the performance, the bouncing came back. Now, Monza specific settings, they've brought a floor, a wing, a floor edge, mirror stalks, and camera positioning that's optimized for all of that circumstance. Now they have a car that's quick and doesn't bounce. Oh, the humanity. What are we doing? Mass laps. It's techie, this. It is very techie, so can put on your accounting cap. And how much has Stroll invested in all these hires, mate? I can't even count that high, mate. Do you know what I mean? My bean counting isn't that god tier. I liken Charles' time to Ferrari oh my gosh, as Vettel's time. Listen, Vettel was on the end of his. Do you know what I mean? He was absolutely on the way. Now, see what you've done there, though, Liam, and I don't disagree with it. And far too kind, by the way. I think you do Charles a disservice. How am I sticking up for Charles? I think you do Charles a disservice, though. I think when Seb was that Ferrari. He was absolutely on the way, and it was a very different Sebastian Vettel to the one that we saw, the killer that we saw between 2010 and 2013, the dude that would nail it on pole and then lights the flag victories every single time, right? Like that dude was gone now. By the time Seb was in the red car, I don't know, he was past his prime. I think, if I'm going to be honest with you, I feel like Charles Leclerc, he's not there yet. This isn't me anointing him the next one by any means, but I feel like he's on the up and up. You can feel the trajectory and the momentum is absolutely swaying his way. Now he's got a car that you can trust, apparently, underneath him, that's not bouncing, that Ferrari say has performance and drivability both in the same space. Now you should see Charles Leclerc true and fair and representative. The dude that the Charles Fossey say can rival a Maximilian Verstappen or Sir Lewis Carl Davidson Hamilton. However, by the way, the side pod's been optimised as well, as if for the avoidance of that. They've gone in, have Scuderia Ferrari, and they are worthy of praise. However, Carlos Sainz has poured water on that flame, right? Because the key question, can they do it again? Play it again, Sam, aka Scuderia Ferrari. If you fix the car, make sure the car is fixed for the next Grand Prix at Baku, and make sure again it's fixed for the difficult circumstance, the automotive pugilism Rubik's Cube that is Singapore. Difficult tracks, right? You've brought a Monza wing to Monza, of course. Well, how about the financial resources to bring a Baku wing to Baku and a Singapore wing to Singapore thereafter? That's where it gets techie. Now, Carlos Sainz says as far as the Constructors' Championship, he feels like he has the minerals and the machine using which he can fight McLaren for that Constructors' Championship, contest it through to race 24, and that's admirable. That bodes well for the F1 community all around the world. However, Carlos Sainz said when he was in the tow at Monza, he felt like the car was super quick. He felt like he had wheels underneath him to do anything. But when he wasn't in the tow, however, he said that the car was just completely different, that it was Monza specific. Ergo, Carlos Sainz expresses concern that at the next Grand Prix, that the Scuderia Ferrari, the SF24 package as an iteration, won't be as fast as it was at Monza. That Ferrari have done what Ferrari normally do and place all their eggs in their home race as a basket. Monza specific setup, techie. Oh, and by the way, one Mika Hakkinen, two-time champion, has chimed in on the dilemma that's been presented to one Maximilian Verstappen. Liam, you're far too kind. So Ferrari contributed to Vettel's spiral. This is true, mate. I neglected to mention Ferrari are going to Ferrari, aren't they, Liam? The oldest story in F1 history over the past 20, 30 years, that they can't help but get out their own way, that Scuderia Ferrari cannot help seize defeat from the jaws of victory each and every single time. You can go back, there's a gazillion examples, and I don't think I think you might be barking up, me and you might be singing from the same hymn sheet here, Liam. I don't think they helped Sebastian Vettel, and I think if you were to talk to Charles Leclerc discreetly, like between these four virtual wars, I think he would concur. I don't think he thinks that Scuderia Ferrari have necessarily helped him. Again, Charles Fossey will say if you give him the right car and give him the circumstance that he's comfortable in, a race engineer that gives him only the necessary information rather than bombarding with minutiae 2 decimal place communication that's not necessary, that is distracting, that Charles Leclerc will get the job done. And again, between these four virtual wars, I'm sure if you were to talk to Charles Leclerc, he would argue that he's been hindered more than he's been helped by the team. But I digress. Max Verstappen, too far too kindly. Macon says, I hope Singapore equals Lewis and Hamilton hammer time, mate. I didn't even know about that car even at this point, Macon. Like, do you know what I mean? Going up and down like a yo-yo is the performance of the Mercedes. They look like they nailed it right. Three race wins in 4. And then all of a sudden, where are they now? Again, the same story for Lewis Hamilton this race weekend past. Looked like a genius in FP3. Or throughout free practice, looked like they had pace. And then all of a sudden in qualifying, Gonzo, Fugazi, Magic Dust, just like Kaiser Soze in The Usual Suspects, right? Gonzo. Oh, and by the way, Max Verstappen. It's getting techie at Red Bull, isn't it? It is getting techie. So many personnel have left. Adrian Newey now about to join Aston Martin. Max Verstappen having told them that he needs two things if he's to stay the course as far as his contract, which ends as at 2028. Harmony at the team and a car capable of winning championships. You could argue as at September 2024 that he has neither. The car is not great for him. Now you can talk about the convergence, whether it's fiddle break or whether it's just Mercedes and McLaren just catching them to what as usually tends to happen towards the latter stages of a rule and reg set. But I can't put my finger definitively on the causation, but the outcomes nobody can argue against, right? It would be disingenuous. All of a sudden, Max looks like Checo Perez, and we know that Max is anything but Checo Perez. We've seen him in Austrian qualifying, Jeddah, Monaco, Sector 3 a couple of years back, Sector 1, Sector 2, Jeddah in 2021. You know for a fact, if past his prologue, that Max Verstappen didn't become an SH1T driver overnight. That's not who he is. So something, therefore, we need to ask questions around the car. Mika Hakkinen gives light to this, because what's going to happen going forward, there's going to become increasing conversations around Max's options, whether he wants to go to another team, a Mercedes, say, or go and join Adrian Newey at Aston Martin and team up yet again with Honda, who, by the way, love themselves some Max Verstappen. They see Max as the spiritual heir to Ayrton Senna. They like a fast racing driver, do Honda, and so they would be keen, of course, to reignite that working relationship. In that light, Mika Hakkinen, two-time champion, says that Max Verstappen currently, as at September 2024, is at a turning point. That Max Verstappen, quote, has been incredible for many years in a row now. And of course, already before that, looking at the lower categories before Formula One, he has an incredible talent, continues Mika Hakkinen. He works hard, he's a disciplined driver, and in Formula One, has had mega success. At the start of the journey with Red Bull, his performance and commitment to winning felt like more than other 19 drivers on the grid. Mate, high praise from Kimi Räikkönen, from Mika Hakkinen, right, who was in himself a god-tier driver. This year, however, says Mika Hakkinen, has been a turning point for Maximilian Verstappen, not necessarily for his performance personally, but for success, continues Mika Hakkinen. This, ladies and gents, is where it gets techie. You need yourself a team, you need yourself a car, and you need personal commitment and discipline to be able to win races. So far, Max has been struggling this year. No kidding, Sherlock. With all due respect, Mika Hakkinen, how can you not see this? This is what's going on, unfolding before our eyes, transpiring in real time, has been transpiring in real time. Lest we forget that Christian Horner spoke about the fundamental flaws in the car when talking about Adrian Newey potentially having been able to fix it. He said Adrian Newey was here when we had these flaws. This goes back to way back. This is last year issues. This hasn't just popped up overnight. They've been struggling with balance for the longest time, but they've managed to paper over the cracks. So much time did they have in hand. It could not continue, continues Mika Hakkinen, because simply, would I say, politics or conflicts inside a team, help from a teammate, all of these things has not been able to move the team positively forward, and that's influenced Max Verstappen's performance. Mika Hakkinen talking, so you can take this to the bank. The driver has to be clear-minded at all times, has to focus on races, fitness, mental strength, and if the team is having problems, then that's only going to go by the wayside. It stands to reason, says Mika Hakkinen. Adrian Newey, the great designer, leaving the team, not to mention Jonathan Wheatley, Rob Marshall, Dan Fallows et al., who have all left over the past 36 months. All of these things will influence, says Mika Hakkinen, Max Verstappen's performance. It's just that obvious. Now that we've seen the development of the Red Bull, and that is not going forward as rapidly as compared with other teams, Max Verstappen, as at the 4th of the 9th, 2024, ladies and gents, is at a turning point in his career. Not to mention, by the way, 2026, new rule set, new engines. Max Verstappen already looking at pastures and new, thinking that potentially Mercedes are going to have the whip hand as far as building themselves a hybrid unit, just like they nailed the split turbo hybrid settings in 2014. Getting techie. Getting too techie. Michael, this is who Max always was without a cheater car. Well, you say that, Michael, but how do you know definitively? If we're gonna deal in facts, Michael, you can make that speculation, but I've already outlined to you, mate. Like, look, if the fiddle brake were absolutely, if I were a betting man, here's the thesis that I'll put forth very quickly. If I were a betting man and there were a fiddle brake, as soon as they take off the fiddle brake, courtesy of Article 11.1.2, you would expect the gap between Red Bull and all of the other 9 cars to do one of these, right? That's not what's happened, Michael. It's only McLaren and Mercedes that have converged materially, bridging the gap to Red Bull. I don't think that therefore means that we can convict fiddle brake beyond reasonable doubt. Killer Cam cannot accept the fact that his baby boy has been driving an illegal car for the past 2 years. Nando, as aforementioned, mate, check the evidence in real time, and you gotta apply your objectivity to these circumstances, these unknowns, as far as is possible, lest we wish to delve and swim within in the very murky waters of uncertainty and unfound accusations. Do you know what I mean? Sounds like Max might take Fernando's seat in a Macon. Like mine's Macon. The rest of RBR personnel are moving. Well, did it make sense for Max to fuck Macon? I'm not even going to get into it. Why would he stay? And again, my friend, my mate and your mate, Peter D. Windsor, has said, don't expect Max to move in 2026 or 2025 even. Why wouldn't Max be incentivized to stay around another couple of years, wait around to the end of 2026 and then take his pick, right? He's Max Verstappen, one of the next generational driver after Sir Lewis Hamilton. I've said again for the avoidance that, and I will say it again, there is Lewis and then there is Max on this plane. Those two have been operating at a different level to the. I don't care who you are, Max. I don't care whether you're Charles Leclerc, whether you're flipping George Russell, Lando Norris, Oscar Piastri. They're here, and then Lewis and Max are here on this different plane. Go. Max Verstappen can have his pick of the litter. So to the boy who cried wolf, yet and still will drop kick an Andrea Kimi Antonelli in the chest, or a George Russell first of his name, with a view to get a whiff of the signature of Maximilian Verstappen. I'm sticking to it. How, ladies and gents, do you like your F1?